Have you ever had that nagging sensation that the world around you isn't quite as solid as it seems? Maybe you've experienced a glitch in the Matrix, a set of keys appearing where they couldn't be, or a street that seems to lead nowhere. Today we're looking at documented cases of individuals who claim to have stepped out of our reality and into something else. These are the top 10 people who reported crossing into another world. Imagine walking into a bustling village only to find that every single person has evaporated, leaving their half-cooked meals still hanging over the fires. This is the bone-chilling report from a fur trapper named Joe LaBelle in 1930. LaBelle was familiar with a small Inuit village on the shores of Anguikuni Lake in Canada, but when he arrived one winter night, the silence was deafening. He found the village completely abandoned, but it wasn't a planned evacuation. Rifles were still leaning against doors, parkas were hanging on hooks, and pots of stew were still sitting on cold embers. Most disturbingly, LaBelle discovered that the village's sled dogs had starved to death despite being tied up near piles of food, and the ancestral graves had been emptied. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police conducted a massive investigation but never found a single footprint leading away from the village. Some researchers believe the entire population fell through a massive localized rift in reality, stepping out of our world and into a void from which they never returned. In 1972, 4 young women were driving home to Southern Utah University after a weekend trip. As they crossed the desolate stretch of desert near Modena, Utah, the asphalt road suddenly turned into a bright white cement track. The desert landscape vanished, replaced by lush green fields, grain silos, and a lake. Thinking that they had taken a wrong turn, they kept driving until they spotted a group of egg-shaped vehicles mounted on 3 wheels. The occupants of these vehicles were strange, tall figures, and they began to chase the girls in their Chevy Nova. Terrified, the driver floored it, and as they sped away, the cement road abruptly ended, and they felt a violent physical jolt. Suddenly, they were back in the dusty, barren Utah desert. There were no meadows, no lakes, and no egg-shaped cars. Many believe the girls didn't just see a hallucination, they drove into a version of Utah from a parallel dimension where the environment and technology evolved in a completely different direction. This next case is terrifying because it highlights the physical danger of crossing over. Dr. Raul Rio Centeno, a celebrated physician and investigator of the Unexplained, reported a case involving a 24-year-old woman who came to him with severe hemiplegia, total paralysis of the left side of her body. She claimed that she had been camping with friends in the Marcahuasi stone forest, an area in Peru famous for its strange stone carvings with magnetic anomalies. The group reportedly found a stone cabin in the woods that was glowing from within. Looking through the window, they saw people dressed in 17th century attire dancing and celebrating. The woman, drawn by the music, attempted to enter the cabin. Just as she stepped halfway through the threshold, her friend realized that something was wrong and pulled her back. The side of her body that had crossed through the doorway remained permanently paralyzed. Medical tests could find no brain trauma or physical cause for these stroke-like symptoms, leading many to believe that the sudden transition between 2 different dimensional frequencies physically damaged her nervous system. Can animals see things that we can't? At Overtoun Bridge in Scotland, the answer seems to be a resounding yes. Since the 1950s, this bridge has seen over 600 dogs suddenly and violently leap over the parapet to the rocks 50 feet below. These aren't just accidents. The dogs often jump from the exact same spot on the right-hand side of the bridge, always on clear days. Locals and paranormal researchers have dubbed the bridge a thin place, a geographical location where the veil between our world and another is practically non-existent. It's theorized that dogs with their heightened senses are perceiving a rip or a portal. The bridge serves as a grim reminder that portals might not always look like doorways to us, but they are very real to the creatures we share our world with. In August 1901, 2 Oxford academics, Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, were walking through the gardens of Versailles. They were looking for the Petit Trianon, a small chateau, when the atmosphere suddenly changed. They described it as a shuddering feeling where the world became flat and lifeless like a giant photograph. They encountered men in long green coats and small 3-cornered hats who gave them directions in an archaic form of French. Moberly eventually saw a woman sketching on the grass. The woman wore an old-fashioned dress and a shady hat, and Moberly noted that she looked strikingly like Marie Antoinette. The two women didn't realize that they had crossed over until they returned to the area later and found that the paths that they had walked, the bridges that they had crossed, and the buildings that they had seen hadn't existed since the French Revolution. Their detailed accounts were published in a book titled An Adventure, which remains one of the most credible reports of a spontaneous time slip or dimensional crossing in history. In 1935, Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard was flying his Hawker Hart biplane over the derelict Drem airfield near Edinburgh. The airfield was a mess, barbed wire everywhere, cracked runways, and a flock of yellow cows grazing on the weeds. Suddenly, Goddard hit a massive, unnatural storm cloud that turned the sky a sickly yellow. When he emerged from the other side, the airfield beneath him had completely changed. The barbed wire was gone and the runways were pristine. Most shockingly, he saw 4 bright yellow planes on the tarmac, a model that he didn't recognize, and mechanics in blue overalls. In 1935, the RAF didn't have yellow planes and their mechanics wore brown. Goddard was so shaken that he didn't mention the event for years. Many believe that Goddard didn't just fly through a storm, he flew through a rift into the immediate future of his own world. On September 3rd, 1873, James Warson, a shoemaker, made a bet that he could run from Leamington to Coventry. His friends Hammerson Burns and Barham Wise followed him in a horse-drawn carriage to ensure that he didn't cheat. Warson was running well, occasionally turning back to joke with his friends. Suddenly, in the middle of a flat, open road, Warson appeared to stumble. His friends reported that he let out a terrible, blood-curdling scream that ended abruptly. Before he could hit the ground, he simply vanished. He didn't fall into a hole, he didn't run into the woods, he disappeared mid-air. His friends searched the area frantically but found nothing, not even a footprint where he had supposedly tripped. This case is often cited by researchers of the Backrooms or no-clipping as one of the earliest documented instances of a human being falling through a soft spot in our physical reality. At Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, portals aren't just a theory, they've been seen on camera. Researchers funded by billionaire Robert Bigelow and later the government have used high-tech sensors to monitor the property. One of the most famous reports involves a shimmering orange hole appearing in the night sky. Through night vision goggles, observers watched as a large, muscular humanoid creature literally crawled out of this glowing circle of light and dropped to the ground before running off into the darkness. These portals are often accompanied by massive spikes in radio frequency and microwave radiation, suggesting that opening a door between worlds requires a massive amount of energy. This is the most famous military conspiracy of all time, the Philadelphia experiment. In 1943, the US Navy allegedly attempted to make the USS Eldridge invisible to radar using unifield field theory. However, witnesses claim the experiment went much further than radar. The ship was reportedly engulfed in a strange, swirling green fog and disappeared from the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard entirely. For several minutes, the ship was reportedly seen at the docks of Norfolk, Virginia, which was hundreds of miles away, before it reappeared in Philadelphia. But the cost was horrifying. Crew members returned with their bodies physically fused into the steel of the ship's bulkheads. Others suffered from phasing, where they would randomly become transparent or vanish in front of their families. Those who could still speak described being in a gray place where time didn't exist. It appears the Navy didn't just hide a ship, they pushed it through a dimensional barrier that it was never meant to cross. Finally, we come to the most terrifying and modern entry on our list, the Backrooms. While many consider this an internet creepypasta, the concept is based on thousands of independent reports of people no-clipping out of reality. This happens when someone is in a liminal space, an empty mall, a quiet stairwell, or a deserted office, and suddenly falls through a wall or floor that should be solid. They report ending up in a seemingly infinite maze of yellowed office rooms with damp carpets and the constant maddening hum of fluorescent lights. What makes this the #1 spot is the sheer volume of found footage and consistent descriptions from people who have no connection to one another. They describe level 0 with such identical detail that it has led some physicists to wonder if our reality is a projection or a program, and the backrooms are the empty space behind the walls of our world. Are these people lucky for seeing the other side, or are they victims of a universe that isn't as stable as it looks? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. For now though, I've been your host, Johnny Rogers, and I'll see you on the next one.